Hello and a very warm welcome. Thanks for tuning in to News9 Live. I'm Kabir Naqvi and you're watching this special broadcast even as Israel blockades and bombards Gaza right here from our studios live here in the national capital, exclusively styled, ladies and gentlemen, by none other than Paul Moll. Looking at the top focus this news hour. As the war intensifies between Israel and Hamas, the death toll on both sides is on a rapid rise. As per the latest update, 900 Israelis have been killed till now, and this mostly constitutes civilians. Mind you, while the number of injured is well above the 2,500 mark in Israel. On the other side, the visuals that you can see of constant bombardment of the Gaza Strip. On the other side in Gaza, over 700 people have been killed in various airstrikes from land and sea and the air, while the number of injured has crossed the 4,000 mark. As per the United Nations estimates, 1,87,500 people have been displaced from the Gaza Strip in the last 4 days that the war has carried on, ladies and gentlemen. Visuals of smoke billowing on the Gaza skyline, even as Israel says that it's going to take matters into its own hands and will strike like never before. It's something that Israel did not begin, but according to Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, it is something that Israel will definitely finish, ladies and gentlemen. Visuals of deployment of tanks on the Gaza border, the southern territories, which what Israel says is now in full control. So the Israeli authorities have said that they are in full control of the southern authorities and the border with Gaza that has been completely and fully sealed now. The army also informed that it found bodies of 1,500, ladies and gentlemen. The army of Israel has informed that it has found 1,500 Hamas bodies of Hamas terrorists, operatives of Hamas inside the Israeli territory, which is located around the Gaza Strip. Even as you're looking at these visuals of bombardment, remember, this is the area which was the first to come under from the Hamas terrorists, first to come under attack. The Hamas terrorists who entered, took over the streets and raided civilian homes on Saturday. Now, Israel has been carrying out numerous airstrikes at several locations across Gaza. And overnight, dozens of fighter jets struck over 200 more targets in Rimal and Khan Yunis in Gaza. Now, Rimal and Khan Yunis, both of these places, according to Israeli operatives and the Israeli Defense Ministry, are used as terror hubs for the Hamas terrorist organization. And a large number of terrorist attacks, the terror attacks and the funding and the planning against Israel are directed particularly here in Rimal and in Khan Yunis in Gaza. These are visuals coming across from Khan Yunis and Rimal, where you can see the constant battery of airstrikes by Israel have reduced the entire area to nothing but rubble. The IDF fighters also struck a mosque in the Khan Yunis regions. The mosque was used as a weapon storage facility by the Hamas. Now, the fighter jets also struck an operational residence which belonged to a Hamas operative in the anti-tank missiles division. These are visuals of the fighter jets that have struck an operational residence. Even as cars ply, vehicles ply, common life and the life of the locals, saying that it has been thrown out of gear would be an understatement, ladies and gentlemen. These are drone visuals of how the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, have crumbled buildings, reduced entire areas to rubble, attacks being carried out from the sea and from air. Meanwhile, the IDF also targeted a terrorist cell that was adjacent to the security fence in the area of Zikkim this very morning. These are visuals of the Israeli Defense Forces in a fresh airstrike that targeted a terrorist cell. According to Israel, 1,352 targets of the Hamas terrorist organization have been hit in Gaza. Now, in addition to the attack in Zikkim, the Israeli Air Force also carried out airstrikes in the Al Furqan neighborhood. Take a look at these visuals. The airstrike in particular targeted a multi-story building which was occupied by a senior official of the Hamas, and it claims to have neutralized the operative. Well, now, in the Jabalia region too, an operational situation room of the Hamas came under a direct strike from the Israeli Air Force. This, ladies and gentlemen, according to the Israeli Defense Forces, is a situation room, an operational situation room of the Hamas organization. This in the Jabalia region, where the entire situation room came under a direct airstrike at the hands of the Israelis. Take a look. And it's not just the Air Force, ladies and gentlemen, that is carrying out this particular onslaught in the Gaza Strip. Israel is also opening up the waterfront for its attack. The Israeli naval forces are also carrying out major strikes along the coastal regions of Gaza, ladies and gentlemen. So not just the air, you've got the army that's deployed near the South Gaza border. You have the army deployed in various other places, even as a two-front war with Lebanon and the Hezbollah attacking up in the north. Now, the naval forces are also carrying out major strikes along the coastal regions of Gaza, ladies and gentlemen. As per the Israeli Defense Forces, the target remains on the infrastructure linked to the Hamas terrorist organizations. Again, reiterating, more than 1,300 places, venues linked to the Hamas terrorist organization have been hit at the hands of the Israelis. These sentinel pictures of the attack that you can see, various operatives of the Hamas terrorist organization that have been neutralized. Even as you can see these night vision camera visuals of the exact places with pinpoint accuracy that Israel is targeting all Hamas operational situation rooms, Hamas terror hubs, weapon storage facilities, you name it. And if this onslaught wasn't enough, even as we're looking at the billowing smoke on the skyline of the Gaza Strip, well, whatever is left of the Gaza Strip, Israeli authorities have said that they will now be distributing thousands of rifles to volunteer guards in border towns and mixed Jewish Arab communities as well. Now, earlier, a report had emerged suspecting a security incident in the Golan Heights and the Upper Galilee region. But the IDF has now ruled out that report and said that there is no security threat in that particular region as of now. But more importantly, weaponry in the hands of volunteer guards. These volunteer guards that are going to come up in the border towns with mixed Jewish Arab communities. This after the naval has been brought in, the naval forces have joined the action. The Air Force has been carrying out those intense bombardment of the Gaza Strip. And of course, the army has been deployed on the ground. A ground invasion, many are saying, also likely on the cards. Now volunteer guards into the fray. And earlier, that particular report on the security incident in the Golan Heights and the Upper Galilee region, the IDF has ruled out that particular report and has claimed that the security threat in the region does not exist. However, as tensions still remain high on the Israel-Lebanon border, Israeli authorities have asked the residents to enter sheltered spaces as well. So a two-pronged war, ladies and gentlemen. Not just at the Gaza Strip, you also have to deal with the Hezbollah. You also have to deal with attacks coming in from Lebanon, right in the north as well.
ماي ايش لقيت؟ خد غير بوتي.
Destruction far and plenty, ladies and gentlemen. This is Khan Yunis in Gaza, another one of those Hamas bastions that the IDF says it has struck and hit. Various Hamas terrorist organizations, operatives have also been neutralized amid these airstrikes that have been carried out at the hands of the Israeli Air Force. So the Navy, the Israeli Air Force, the battalions on the ground, the guard volunteers, everybody is clearly hinting at a major invasion of Gaza anytime soon. But it's not just the airstrikes through which Israel is targeting Gaza. The Israeli authorities have also ordered a complete siege and an immediate cut to water supply to the Gaza Strip. The Gaza Strip could really be on the brink of a new humanitarian crisis, ladies and gentlemen. Why these visuals are dark, you might ask? Well, because the area, which is home to about 2.3 million people, which receives about 10% of its annual water from Israel. Since the Hamas attacks on Saturday morning, Israel has stopped all supplies entering Gaza. What you're looking at is an attempt to stop the water supply. And it's not just water supply that we're talking about. We're also talking about the food supply, we're talking about medicine supply, electricity has been cut, fuel supplies are down. They've all been cut from Gaza for the past 2 days now. If experts and analysts are to be believed, solar power can only help Gaza function for another day at max. Food is running out, ration supplies running short, no water, no electricity, no fuel. Not just airstrikes, you've got another humanitarian crisis for the common people for the innocent non-combatants of Gaza to deal with. Well, now in response to the Israeli strikes, the Hamas has threatened to execute an Israeli captive every time Israel bombs a Palestinian home without warning. This as Israel called up an unprecedented 3 lakh reservists and imposed a blockade on the Gaza Strip, raising fears it planned a ground assault soon. Now, Hamas has also given a deadline to the residents of Ashkelon to leave the entire area before 5 o'clock local time on Tuesday. This just in. These are visuals of all the peoples that have been taken hostage by Hamas, dragged back into Gaza. This is why the operative and the spokesperson of Hamas threatened to execute, whilst broadcasting it live, to execute an Israeli captive every time Israel bombs a Palestinian home without prior warning. This particular threat by the Hamas comes as Israel has already called upon an unprecedented 3 lakh reservists and has already imposed a blockade on the Gaza Strip, including cutting water supply, cutting electricity supply, cutting fuel supply, and constant bombardment of Gaza. In terms of the hostage, ladies and gentlemen, dozens of Israelis, including women, children, the elderly, mostly youngsters, have been taken hostage. The hostage situation is complicating the entire military prowess of Israel, because potential Israeli military operations have to be really thought after. There were several reports that were doing the rounds yesterday that Israel is not going to pay heed to all the Israelis that have been taken captive. They're going to attack nonetheless. Meanwhile, at least 100 Israelis have been taken hostage, and reports suggest that Americans, British, other nationalities, those citizens are among those that have been held captive. Foreign nationals, including Nepalese and Thais, several of them also being killed. That's what the reports are suggesting on the 4th day of the Israel-Gaza conflict, ladies and gentlemen. Meanwhile, another important stakeholder and key player in the region, Qatar and its Qatari mediators have held urgent calls with Hamas officials to try to negotiate freedom for Israeli women and children, particularly all these women and children that have been seized by the terrorist group and held in Gaza. This in exchange for the release of 36 Palestinian women and children from Israel's prisons. So Qatari mediators have entered the fray here once again, ladies and gentlemen. Remember how Saudi Arabia dealt a heavy blow to Qatar, warning it, threatening it to not interfere in the region's politics. Meanwhile, Qatari mediators have held urgent calls with Hamas officials to negotiate a freedom for Israeli women and children seized by the terrorist group in exchange for the release of 36 Palestinian women and children from Israel's prison. But these visuals that you're looking at, all these visuals, these rockets that are constantly flying to and fro from Tel Aviv back into the Gaza Strip, being fired from the Gaza Strip into Israel, how is all of this missile theater defense system working? And just for that, News9 has placed boots on the ground, ladies and gentlemen. We've sent our own reporter that is bringing us crucial updates from ground zero. Unpack these front-line visuals, front lines of the Israel war, as News9's fearless reporter provides us a gripping ground report. Really experience the intense reality of this conflict as our team faces a live rocket attack, capturing the chaos that ensues soon after. Multiple rockets target the location, sending locals into a panic. Witness these harrowing moments and the unwavering dedication of our team, ladies and gentlemen, as we bring you these crucial updates. This is war journalism at its most daring, ladies and gentlemen. Take a look.
पीछे देखिए, लगातार आपको अटैक की तस्वीरें नजर आएंगी और एक दो जगह रॉकेट लॉन्चर्स गिरे हैं हमास के। देखिए मेरे पीछे धुआं आपको नजर आ जाएगा और इधर पूरे इलाकों के अंदर आपको ये आयरन ड्रोम नजर आ जाएगा। देखिए ताबड़तोड़ आयरन ड्रोम की जो वो है वो आपको नजर आ जाएंगे और अभी भी यहाँ पे टारगेट किया जा रहा है। और देखिए कई जगहों पर टारगेट हुए हैं, कई जगहों पर लगातार पिछले कई दिनों से टारगेट किया जा रहा है। आप आवाज सुन सकते हैं इनकी। और अभी अगर आप देखें तो लोग जो हैं वो नीचे लेटे हुए हैं हमारे साथ जो लोग थे बाकी लोग भी अपनी गाड़ियां लगाकर बैठ गए हैं। देखिए वहां पर अटैक हुआ है अभी, और अगर मैं अपने कैमरा पर्सन से कहूं तो आपको यहां से भी दिखाएंगे कि देखिए कुछ गाड़ियों को कल भी टारगेट किया गया था। ये देखिए ये गाड़ियां यहां पर आपको पूरी तरीके से क्षतिग्रस्त मिलेंगी, आपको बर्बाद मिलेंगी। और इन गाड़ियों के अलावा अब वहां पर देखिए आग लगी हुई है वहां पर भी, और यहाँ पर लोगों में पैनिक है। देखिए लोग भाग रहे हैं। मैं आपको दिखा रहा था कि अभी यहाँ पर इसी तरीके के रॉकेट से अटैक किया गया है, और अभी हम कोशिश करते हैं आपको आगे लेके जाने की, क्योंकि कई जगहों को टारगेट किया गया है। अभी जिस जगह हम मौजूद हैं ये बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण इलाका है। देखिए आपको नज़र आ रहा होगा कि किस तरीके से अभी यहाँ पर भयंकर, आप देखिए कि टारगेट किया गया है, आग लगी है, और इसी तरीके से अलग अलग जगहों पे टारगेट किया जा रहा है। आप अगर देखें कि अटैक यहाँ पर हुआ है, हम यहाँ पर पहुंचे हुए हैं और मैं आपको दिखा रहा हूँ तस्वीर, अगर आप पीछे देख रहे हो कि यहाँ पर अभी अटैक हुआ है। अब हम यहीं पर मौजूद थे, ताबड़तोड़ कई रॉकेट से दागे गए, और देखिए लाइव अभी भी आप फटते हुए नजर आ जाएंगे आपको कई जगह, क्योंकि कई स्प्लिंटर से अटैक किया गया है, कई रॉकेट्स दागे गए हैं। अब ये लाइव तस्वीरें हम आपको दिखा रहे हैं, ये साउथ इलाका है इजराइल का, और देखिए लगातार मैं आपको बता रहा था कि कितना पैनिक है यहाँ पर। अभी भी कई जगहों पर हम उस एपिसेंटर में है जो गाजा पट्टी के ठीक पास है, और देखिए तस्वीरें हम अपने दर्शकों को सीधे पहुंचा रहे हैं कि आप देखिए कितनी भयानक होती जा रही है जंग। और अभी देखिए कई लोगों को इसमें चोटें भी आई हैं, कई लोगों को यहाँ से हटाया गया है। ये तस्वीरें लाइव तस्वीरें हैं हमारे दर्शकों को दिखाने के लिए कि देखिए अभी क्या हालात है यहाँ पर। लोग जो है फोर्सेस ने यहाँ पर लोगों को निकाल जरूर लिया है, सिक्योरिटी फोर्सेस यहाँ मौजूद हैं, लेकिन इन जगहों को टारगेट किया गया है हमास की तरफ से। और देखिए लगातार रॉकेट कई दागे, हालांकि आयरन ड्रोम इन्होंने इस्तेमाल किया और आयरन ड्रोम ने कई रॉकेट्स को निष्क्रिय किया, लेकिन फिर भी एक रॉकेट यहाँ पर आकर गिरा और इस पूरे रिहायशी इलाके को टारगेट किया गया है। ये साउथ का इलाका है, और मैं आपको बता रहा था कि किस तरीके का पैनिक यहाँ पर मौजूद है, किस तरीके का पैनिक सिचुएशन यहाँ पर है। और देखिए तस्वीर अगर आप देखें कि गाड़ियों को क्षति पहुंची है, पूरे घर के अंदर आग लग चुकी है जिसको बुझाने का काम किया जा रहा है। यहाँ पर एम्बुलेंस के साथ साथ जो सिक्योरिटी फोर्सेस हैं वो भी यहाँ पर मौजूद हैं, और अभी ये हालात हैं। देखिए अभी आग को पर काबू पाने का काम किया जाए। अब कितनी कैजुअल्टी हैं, कितने लोगों को चोटें आई हैं, इसका आकलन नहीं है, इसके बारे में जानकारी नहीं है, लेकिन ये ज़रूर है कि ऐसी स्थिति आपको साउथ इजराइल के हर दूसरी गलियों में देखने को मिल जाएगी। हर एक घंटे के अंदर रॉकेट दागे जाते हैं, मल्टीपल रॉकेट दागे जाते हैं, और जिसको निष्क्रिय करने की कोशिश इजराइल की फोर्सेज ज़रूर करती है, लेकिन हमास की तरफ से ये अटैक रुकने का नाम नहीं ले रहे। ऐसे इलाकों के अंदर लगातार हमास अटैक कर रहा है, सिविलियन एरियाज को टारगेट कर रहा है, और कोशिश ये कर रहा है कि ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा कैजुअल्टीज हो। देखिए आप देखिए कि किस तरीके से सिक्योरिटी फोर्सेस ने अभी कॉर्डन किया हुआ है, इस इलाकों में हटाया जा रहा है, और इनका जो ऑपरेशन है ये यहाँ पर चल रहा है। अभी जब हम यहाँ मौजूद थे, हमारे ठीक कैमरे में कैप्चर हुई सारी तस्वीरें जिसमें जो मल्टीपल रॉकेट्स थे वो दागे जा रहे थे, और लगातार उनको हम देख रहे थे, हम उनको कैप्चर कर पा रहे थे। हम ये भी देख रहे थे कि कैसे आयरन ड्रोम तुरंत एक्टिव हुआ और उसके बाद कई मिसाइल्स को, कई रॉकेट्स को निष्क्रिय किया गया, लेकिन एक जो बता रहे हैं 1 से 2 रॉकेट जो हैं वो सिविलियन एरियाज में जाकर गिरा है, जिसने कुछ इलाकों को नुकसान भी पहुंचाया है।
Well, my colleague Sumit there bringing us that courageous report. But Sumit also talking about the Iron Dome. So how does the Iron Dome operate, and where all does it operate? Also, is the Iron Dome enough for Israel's defense? And did it fail this Saturday when the Hamas launched its offensive? Now the Iron Dome in itself is a remarkable air defense system, ladies and gentlemen, developed indigenously by Israel. It's widely regarded as one of the most sophisticated air defense systems in the world. It's been designed to respond to short-range rockets, primarily from Gaza and South Lebanon, providing protection against these threats. The Israel Defense Forces, the IDF, claim an impressive success rate of 85 to 90%, intercepting the majority of incoming threats. The Iron Dome comprises several key components, including launchers, interceptors, ground-based multi-mission radars, and a control system. The radar tracks incoming fire and intercepts it with the rockets. Now, Israel has strategically deployed 10 Iron Dome batteries, ladies and gentlemen, 10 Iron Dome batteries across the country to defend against short-range rocket attacks. The system targets rockets within a range of 4 to 70 kilometers. Now, each Iron Dome battery, and there are 10 of those placed around the country, each Iron Dome battery costs approximately $157 million, while each interceptor costs around $50,000. Each battery can defend an area of up to 155 square kilometers. But even as we talk about the Iron Dome, let's explore the broader missile defense theater at Israel's disposal. Now, Israel's missile defense system theater has three parts, ladies and gentlemen. What you're taking a look at is the Iron Dome, how the Iron Dome intercepts. These are air defense systems. Apart from the Iron Dome, Israel has additional layers of missile defense. First one is the Iron Dome, of course. You've got the Iron Dome. The Iron Dome system works within a range of 4 to 70 kilometers for short range attacks. Then you have the middle layer, which is the David's Sling. The David's Sling system is designed to target missiles with a range of up to 250 kilometers. So this is the middle range. And then finally, you have the long range Arrow 3 system. The Arrow 3 system can intercept attacks within a staggering range of up to 2,400 kilometers. So this is for your all long-range missiles. Long-range missiles, intercontinental ballistic missiles, it is supposed to intercept all of that. But the bigger question, did the Iron Dome, and even as we're looking at these visuals of the Iron Dome in action in the night time, as Hamas launches its rockets, the Iron Dome intercepts. Did the Iron Dome face a challenge recently? Well, indeed, despite its high success rate, there were moments of vulnerability. And finally, did the Iron Dome fail? Hamas rockets managed to hit some targets in Israel. Despite its success rate, Hamas rockets did manage to make landfall, exposing a momentary weakness. Now, during a particularly intense barrage, the Iron Dome became overwhelmed as Hamas fired around 5,000 rockets within a span of 20 minutes. However, despite this barrage, the damage in Israel remained limited. This raises intriguing questions about the capabilities and limitations of this renowned defense system. We'll continue to monitor developments closely as the situation evolves around the Iron Dome. Meanwhile, ladies and gentlemen, News9 is reporting live from the Gaza border. We're braving the conflict. We're braving the conflict-ridden regions and bringing you factual and true reports from the heart of the actions. Tanks have been deployed. An army has been mobilized in large numbers. This ground report coming right from the Israel-Gaza border. Take a look.
हम इस समय मौजूद हैं गाजा पट्टी के बेहद करीब और मैं आपको बता रहा था कि आज हमने सिटी रोड के बाद अब रुख किया आगे का और अब हम यहाँ पहुँच चुके हैं गाजा पट्टी के फर्स्ट लाइन ऑफ डिफेंस पर और ये वो आर्टिलरी लोकेशंस है जहां से लगातार हमास को टारगेट किया जा रहा है। आप देखिए ये आर्टिलरी गन्स आपको मेरे पीछे नजर आ जाएंगी। आर्टिलरी गन्स ये करीब बताया जा रहा है कि ये सेल्फ प्रोपेल्ड आर्टिलरी गन्स हैं और इनकी रेंज कई आर्टिलरी गन्स की करीबन 35 टू 40 किलोमीटर्स की करीब इनकी रेंज है। और इन जगहों को आप देखिए कि इसको इसलिए बनाया गया है क्योंकि जहाँ से आप धुआं उठता देख रहे हैं वो गाजा पट्टी है। देखिए मेरे कैमरा पर से निशांत आपको दिखा पा रहे हो कि जहाँ पे धुएं के आपको गुबार नजर आ रहे हैं थोड़े थोड़े, वो सारे गाजा पट्टी के एरिया और जब भी जरूरत पड़ती है ये आर्टिलरी गन्स यहाँ से फायर करते हैं। ऐसी मल्टीपल लोकेशंस बनाई गई हैं। मैं आपको एग्जैक्टली इस जगह का नाम नहीं बता सकता क्योंकि मुझे मना किया गया है, लेकिन फिर भी मैं आपको ये बता देता हूं कि हम गाजा पट्टी के बहुत करीब हैं। 4 से 5 किलोमीटर के पीछे का ये एरिया है जिसको फर्स्ट लाइन ऑफ डिफेंस बनाया गया है। और अभी अगर आप देखें तो आपको नजर आएगा कि कई मल्टीपल आर्टिलरी गन्स को यहाँ पे डिप्लॉय किया गया है। इनकी रेंज या फिर इनकी जो बैरल है उसके निशाने पर गाजा पट्टी है, यानी जब इनको गोहेड मिलता है ये फायर करते हैं। और अभी थोड़ी देर पहले इन्होंने फायर बंद किया है, लेकिन मैं आपको दिखाने की कोशिश कर रहा था कि आखिरकार इस समय किस तरीके के हालात हैं। और ये वो एरिया है जहाँ पे आईडीएफ की जो आर्टिलरी गन्स है आर्मर्ड है उनको तैनात किया गया है। मुझे बताया गया कि अभी कुछ और चीज़ों को दूसरी लोकेशन पे भी भेजा गया है। कई और ऐसी मल्टीपल जगह हैं जहाँ पर ऐसे आर्टिलरी गन्स को डिप्लॉय किया गया है। हमने आपको दिखाया था कि कैसे जो हमास के मिलिटेंट्स की तरफ से टारगेट किया गया था, लेकिन रिटेलिएटरी एक्शंस यानी रिकैप्चरिंग या फिर आप कह सकते हैं कि हमास के खिलाफ जो वॉर छेड़ी है इजराइल ने, वो अब किस तरीके से रुख लेती जा रही है, वो उसकी डिप्लॉयमेंट कैसी है। हम टीवी 9 भारतवर्ष आपको पिछले कई दिनों से लगातार 2 दिनों से लगातार हम आपको इन लोकेशंस पे, मल्टीपल लोकेशंस पे दिखा रहे हैं। देखिए अब एक आप देखेंगे कि आगे आपको एक बार फिर जगह से धुआं उठता हुआ नजर आ जाएगा। मेरे कैमरा पर्सन निशांत अगर आपको दिखा पा रहे हो तो ये वही इलाका है जहाँ पे अभी थोड़ी देर पहले बताया जा रहा है कि इन रॉकेट से दागा, इन आर्टिलरी गन से दागा गया था। और लगातार अपनी इस जगह की डिप्लॉयमेंट इस तरीके की रखी गई है इन्होंने कि कभी भी जब ज़रूरत पड़ेगी इनको दोबारा से अटैक करने के लिए तैयार हो जाएंगे। और आप देखेंगे शेल्स आप देख सकते हैं उनके, आप शेल्स भी देख सकते हैं। और उसके अलावा दूसरी जगह आप देखें कि कैसे इस पूरे एरिया को सिक्योर किया गया है। TV9 भारतवर्ष ऐसा पहला चैनल है भारत का जो यहाँ पहुँचा है और आपको ये सारी लोकेशन इसलिए दिखा रहा है ताकि आप इनकी स्ट्रैटेजिक लोकेशन समझिए और आप ये भी समझिए कि आखिरकार हम जहाँ से रिपोर्ट कर रहे हैं वो कितना आगे का एरिया। ये वो एरिया है जो लाइन ऑफ फायर में है, यानी लगातार यहीं से सारी चीज़ों की मूवमेंट की जा रही है, यहीं से एक्शंस लिए जा रहे हैं। और इन्हीं पर कमांड सेंटर भी, मैंने आपको सुबह दिखाया था कि कैसे एक जगह पर हम कमांड सेंटर में पहुंचे थे और उसके बाद में अब आपको फर्स्ट लाइन ऑफ एक्शन या फिर फायर के पास लेकर आया हूं जहां से आर्टिलरी गन्स का ये फायर किया जा रहा है।
But you know what? Even as Sumit brings us these hefty details right from the Gaza border front line, let's talk about what happened on Saturday. How did the Hamas and all the Hamas operatives breach that particular blockade? I mean, with Israel spending billions of dollars, how did the Hamas infiltrate the blocked border? Now let me tell you, the smart fence, what it's called, that separates Israel from Gaza is equipped with cutting-edge technology designed to detect any security breach. This, what you're looking on your screens, is the iron wall. It's the iron wall the Hamas terrorists breached to get into Israel. It is a 40-mile-long barricade along the Gaza Strip, which was completed in 2021. It costed Israel a whopping $1.11 billion. Now, according to the IDF, the fence was breached at 29 points, ladies and gentlemen. This smart fence that costed Israel $1.11 billion was breached at 29 points, and Hamas fighters faced little to no resistance from guard towers stationed every 500 meters, as the border was minimally stuffed, is what we're picking up. Now, Hamas also used explosives to blow up the sections of the wall, with men on bikes driving through those gaps. Bulldozers were used to widen the gap further and create enough space for larger vehicles to then later get through. And after all the Hamas operatives got through, well, the Supernova Music Festival, the visuals of which that you're seeing on your screens, was the first that they hit. This is how Hamas operatives entered and breached the blockade, the smart fence. It was breached at 29 points. The tactics that was used was to use explosives to blow up sections of the wall, then men on bikes driving through those gaps. Bulldozers were used to widen the gaps later, creating enough space for all the larger vehicles to then go through, launching on that particular assault. Meanwhile, this is not the only way how to and fro and transit was managed back in the day. The Israeli military has been focusing on the tunnels in the region as well. Hamas operatives have been using the tunnels to infiltrate southern Israel. My colleague Aditya Rajkal gives us an insight on these Hamas tunnels when he visited Gaza back in November 2022. Take a look at this report to understand better about the tunnel network at play as well.
Well, at this moment, we are very close to the international border between Israel and Gaza. We've often heard, all across the international media, a lot of narrative, a lot of propaganda as well on what exactly happens here. But at this moment, we are at the bank inside a tunnel that was detected a few years back. And this was a tunnel that was used by a terrorist organization, Islamist jihadis, as well as Hamas, to in fact raise havoc on the innocent Israeli citizens. These tunnels that we are standing here right behind me, you can see this tunnel. You can very well see how, this is a 2.5 kilometer long tunnel, 900 meters well within the Israeli territory that was used by the Islamist jihadis to in fact do smuggling, a lot of weapons also being brought in to in fact have these attacks. And right now we have a very important guest with us, Jonathan Conricus, Colonel Jonathan Conricus, who is the former international spokesperson of the IDF. I want to begin by asking you, before we go to the tunnels, that we've heard you often. I've seen your videos, in international media, and we've seen a lot of propaganda against Israel. We've seen a lot of narrative as if, there is Israeli occupation, Israel, if one were to believe the news reports, it's almost that every Palestinian house has an Israeli soldier standing outside, and there are attacks happening every day. Please give us a clear picture, because we're standing back here. What's exactly happening here?
What's happening is that we have Israeli communities just hundreds of meters by us, and we're standing in a tunnel that was supposed to allow Hamas terrorists to get to those communities and kill Israeli civilians. We have a border about 900 meters away, which is monitored and patrolled by Israeli soldiers, and the purpose of that border is to keep the terrorists in Gaza and to keep Israeli civilians safe. What I urge people is to believe or to visit themselves if they can, and if they cannot, to consume news from credible sources from the ground, with less propaganda, as you said, and with more real information. It's a complex situation, but what I can assure you, as somebody who served in the IDF for 24 years, is that the IDF is, first of all, committed to the security of the State of Israel and Israeli civilians. But it is also committed to international law, and it tries in all of its operations to minimize the influence of its operations on Palestinian civilians, and it tries to distinguish between civilians and combatants, terrorists. What makes it very difficult is that the terrorists don't look like soldiers. They all try very hard to look like civilians. They hide from the using civilians as their human shields, and they use infrastructure like the one we have behind us in order to get to our civilians, to the Israeli civilians, and to attack them. So it's far more complex than is often portrayed in international media.
Meanwhile, shifting our focus to what's happening on the political front, Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, is calling upon the opposition to come together for the sake of national unity without setting any conditions. This is much like what happened before the 1967 Six-Day War. The Prime Minister emphasizes the need for leadership to unite and has urged opposition leaders to establish an emergency national unity government immediately, similar to what occurred during the Six-Day War under Menachem Begin's leadership.
Israel is at war. We didn't want this war. It was forced upon us in the most brutal and savage way. But though Israel didn't start this war, Israel will finish it. Once the Jewish people were stateless. Once the Jewish people were defenseless. No longer. Hamas will understand that by attacking us, they've made a mistake of historic proportions. We will exact a price that will be remembered by them and Israel's other enemies for decades to come. The savage attacks that Hamas perpetrated against innocent Israelis are mind-boggling, slaughtering families in their homes, massacring hundreds of young people at an outdoor festival, kidnapping scores of women, children, and elderly, even Holocaust survivors. Hamas terrorists bound, burned, and executed children. They are savages. Hamas is ISIS. And just as the forces of civilizations united to defeat ISIS, the forces of civilization must support Israel in defeating Hamas. I want to thank President Biden for his unequivocal support. I want to thank leaders across the world who are standing with Israel today. I want to thank the people and Congress of the United States of America. In fighting Hamas, Israel is not only fighting for its own people, it is fighting for every country that stands against barbarism. Israel will win this war. And when Israel wins, the entire civilized world wins.
Meanwhile, the Western world has come out in support of Israel. In a joint statement, France, Germany, Italy, United Kingdom and the United States have expressed their steadfast and united support to the state of Israel. They have issued an unequivocal condemnation of Hamas and its appalling acts of terrorism. Meanwhile, in an important development, Russian President Vladimir Putin has reportedly said that the creation of Palestinian state is in fact a necessity. The White House, on the other hand, has said that although it has no intention to put United States' men on the ground, US aircraft carrier strike group will soon arrive in the East Mediterranean waters to support the Israeli forces. But Iran's role is also important. Iran and the power bloc rivalry is at hand. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, has, however, targeted Israel. He said that Israel has suffered irreparable failure on both military and intelligence fronts following Hamas's shock weekend attack. Listen in.
این زلزله ویرانگر
I say this devastating earthquake has managed to destroy some of the main structures of the government.
Well, now, on the other hand, the Israel-Palestinian conflict has taken a deadly turn, and it's causing a reality check for an ambitious trade route known as the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, the IMEEC or the IMEC, whatever you want to call it. At the G20 in New Delhi recently, it was championed by Washington and dubbed as a Western rival to China's Belt and Road Initiative, the BRI. Now, the IMEC had lofty goals. However, the ongoing conflict, ladies and gentlemen, is now forcing a pause on any grand financial visions involving this region. Take a look at that. That is the economic corridor at play. It needs two wings. There are two links. One that links India to Saudi Arabia, the other, the Saudi Arabia to Europe. That particular link, it needs Iran's help as well. However, the ongoing conflict, it is now highlighting the fragility of this corridor. It is now forcing a pause on any grand financial visions involving this particular region. The backers of the IMEC corridor had been enthusiastic about its potential involving railways, ports, and green energy. United States President Joe Biden referred to it as a really big deal, while the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen spoke of a green and digital bridge across continents and civilizations. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi even hailed IMEC as the basis of world trade for hundreds of years to come. This corridor is also part of the wider G7 plans to mobilize $600 billion by the year 2027 into global infrastructure investments. Now, the IMEC indeed holds significant promise, particularly in reducing shipping times by up to 40%. There is a clear demand, as evidenced by India's total trade with Saudi Arabia, which has more than doubled in just 2 years, reaching around $53 billion in the 2023 financial year. For New Delhi, the real prize, of course, lies in strengthening its relationship with Europe, its third largest trading partner. But while India's ties with the Gulf have warmed considerably, the corridor's success hinges on a reliable link, a linkage between Saudi Arabia and now war-stricken Israel. This year, India's Adani Group acquired the port of Haifa, a critical part of the plan, ladies and gentlemen. However, the current situation poses challenges. Normalizing diplomatic relations between Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is even riskier now. The Arab world's popular sentiment sides with Gaza, while Israel is launching retaliatory strikes with the help of Western support. With the record mobilization of Israel's army reservists, a return to the previous status quo seems distant, and the violence, which has claimed more than 1,500 lives at least, may unfortunately continue to rise. And with that, the fragility of the IMEC economic corridor has been highlighted. So essentially, normalizing the diplomacy between Israel and Saudi Arabia is a prerequisite for the IMEC corridor to work out. Meanwhile, that's all the time we have for you. We're going to continue to bring you all the live reportage, all the live details, the updates from war-stricken zone of Gaza, even as Israel bombards and blockades Gaza. Those reservists are on the ground. Naval forces have been deployed. The Air Force is constantly striking the Gaza Strip. What about the humanitarian crisis on the ground? What about the non-combatants on both sides of the divide? How is the Western world and the Eastern world now going to react to this? What about the power blocks? And lastly, and most importantly, what about the death toll? News9 Live will bring you all the latest developments. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Kabir Naqvi signing off from our live studio here in the National Capital, powered and styled only by Paul Moore. Ladies and gentlemen, lots more coming right on the other side. Don't go anywhere.
China won't let us rest easy on our borders, but they will keep flooding our markets. What does Xi Jinping really want?
I think he wants the Indian market, no doubt about it.
It's really a matter of showing their dominance.
India's great Chinese conundrum.
Nobody can contain it. Not the United States, not China, not anybody else.
Frenemies. This and more. Streaming on the world's first news OTT, News9 Plus. Download now.
There was a metro revolution in the country, immediately, explosion. And today about 20 metros are going on. The government should realize